makes this whole thing fun and interesting. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are actually listening to the very first episode of Discussing Who. So, what is Discussing Who? Who is Discussing Who? I think let's first talk about who is discussing who, and then we'll get into a little bit more exactly what this podcast is going to be about. So to get started, I will introduce myself. My name is Kyle Jones. I am a longtime fan of Doctor Who, but I've also been a longtime fan of comic books and sci-fi. And I am joined by two other people who will be joining me regularly on this podcast. The first one is, I will call him a partner in crime with the Podshock proportions, and that is my companion on Doctor Who Podshock, along with several other people. Lee and I were actually the new kids on the block last year, so I'm going to introduce you, Lee, so take it away.
Hey, Lee Shackleford here.
Well, tell us about yourself, sir.
Oh, there's not much to tell. I was rocketed to Earth as an infant from the distant planet Krypton, and
1938, wasn't it?
1938, and I think I'm holding together pretty well, all things considered.
But you are wearing a bit thin.
A little bit, yes. Time for regeneration.
Exactly. Well, the other gentleman is someone who I've worked with over the years and actually have taught comic books, taught Doctor Who. Clarence, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Clarence. I'm a full-time programmer, part-time sci-fi enthusiast.
Always or the other way around.
Yeah, whichever way you want to put it. But, I've always had great discussions with Kyle about sci-fi, especially Doctor Who. He's kind of been the person who has introduced me to it. So I'm fairly new to it, and my views may be a little bit different from the popular view of, the other two guys on this podcast. But I think it is a valid view nonetheless.
No, and that's what makes this, that's what makes this whole thing fun and interesting is, everybody brings their own view to it. Everybody brings something different to it. And where someone may see one thing, some person may see something else. And one of the perspectives that you said you were going to bring is you're going to be our Q&A person. You're going to be asking us questions that we may be taking for granted simply because, well, we've known about it all these years. So you're going to be the listener's perspective, so to speak.
At least I'll try to fill that role.
All right, good deal. Well,
I hope we have different viewpoints because otherwise, at least two of us are irrelevant.
Well, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
If the three of us agree on everything, then yeah.
Well, the one thing that I think we can all agree on is this is something that we want to be fun. We want it to be just a normal conversation. So for everyone listening, I want you to know that we're going to prepare. We're going to have something that we want to talk about. But on the flip side, we're not going to put a lot of planning and details into it simply because we want the conversation to flow, be organic, and if something comes up and we start talking about A, that's fine. B, that's fine. We just want it to kind of flow. So we'll let you know what we're discussing, but particularly who we're discussing at the very beginning of the show. And that leads us into a little bit of why we're talking about calling this Discussing Who. The first inclination is if you say Discussing Who, guess what? We're talking about Doctor Who, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So we purposely designed the logo with the O turning into a question mark. And I have to give Lee credit for that because that was a little bit his idea to make that into something, another name of, and a play on the word. So Lee, I give you credit for challenging us on the name and creating some ideas with the name. So I give you, credit for that. So what we'll do at the very beginning is let you know who we're talking about, whether it's comic books, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's Doctor Who, whether it's something else. But considering the fact that the main name is Who, this episode we will be talking about none other than the Doctor. So guys, you ready to get into it?
Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the biggest thing for 2016, I guess, is there will be no Doctor Who in 2016, with the exception of Christmas. Guys, what do you think about it?
Well, I guess that wraps us up for talking about Who, so let's move on to something else.
Exactly.
Again, like the newcomers. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Let me just say the newcomers' opinion on this is that it's just very unfortunate, especially from the way I've watched 2006 on. Netflix, we were in the age of binge watching. So, I've had the privilege, I would say, of watching most of the episodes pretty much back to back. And, going through Doctor Who, then eventually going through Torchwood. And when I finally got caught up, I was really excited. But by the same token, I'd go have these discussions with Kyle. And when he's telling me it's going to be a year and a half, a year away, it is very disappointing for the person that is kind of just caught up and is very interested and ready for something new and fresh.
Lee, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm having the same thought. Chip Sutter's podcast, The 2 Minute Time Lord, which I very much enjoy. I was just listening to his segment about this subject just today, and I liked his observation that it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the fandom as we're going through a year of hiatus, because our level of scrutiny has gotten so high that the ordinary is no longer sufficient for us.
Right.
I was sort of reading between the lines of what he was saying there, and I feel like maybe it's time to cool down a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
No, and on top of that, the entire decision by the BBC, and I understand that they're trying to look into other ways to make money with their declining revenues, and the pulling from Netflix, pulling from Hulu, not having that ability for people to stream in the interim. I think they're playing a gamble there. I don't know how well that's going to work for them, but you may have noticed that I did leave out Amazon Prime, because I read yesterday that come March, the first 8 seasons are returning to Amazon Prime. So I found that very interesting.
And when you say the first 8, you mean 2005 to
2005, right? Not the original. That would be nice if that means that we have actually found the lost ones. But
1963 to 71, that would be awesome.
Yes, but no, the 2005 to forward.
And are you specifically speaking to the fact that the BBC are coming out with their own streaming service?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's from what I've read. That's mainly a big chunk of the reason why it disappeared from Netflix, disappeared from Hulu, was because of the licensing, and they were wanting to create their own streaming.
Do you know when they're supposed to launch that, or how
no,
close?
I haven't heard.
Because I agree, it does seem like for this fandom, the timing is everything. If they deprive the world of streaming access to Doctor Who for a year, then they've shot themselves in the foot, haven't they?
Right, because, look at Game of Thrones. I mean, that comes out once a year, but I could go right now to HBO Go or whatever your Comcast, Xfinity, Time Warner, whoever it might be, and I guarantee you, if you have HBO, you can watch Game of Thrones, and you can probably watch all 5 seasons if you wanted to. So I think that's a very big gamble. Now, in the meantime, we do have at some point this year, however many episodes it may be, we've got what they're calling class the spinoff coming. So, what are y'all's thoughts about that?
I haven't been able to work up any enthusiasm about that. If I guess I haven't heard the hook yet. I don't quite get why I should be excited about this yet.
Right, Clarence, have you read anything?
This is actually the first I've heard of it.
Yep, it's basically set in, well, not basically. It is set in Coal Hill School, and we don't know what the premise is. We don't know who it's starring, and could it be that the fact that we don't know the premise, that we don't know who's starring in it, could that be part of what's going to wow people in the interim?
We'll need more teaser than that, I think.
I do too. I think so too.
When is this slated to be released? Like
sometime this year. I have no idea.
So they're shooting it now.
As far as I know.
But it doesn't involve Claire as the teacher, right?
As far as I know.
Her being sort of, spoiler, dead and all.
Right.
To the extent that she is. Yeah. Yeah, because what I immediately thought of was the Sarah Jane Adventures, and boy, would I love to see more of that. But, God bless him. Nobody can bring back Elizabeth Sladen for that. I don't know. It'd just be interesting to see what's the sci-fi aspect. What makes it part of the Doctor Who universe, other than this being the school where it all started. We've seen unusual things happen at Coal Hill School over the years, so I guess it's a sort of a target or a hub. So maybe that's the idea.
Well, I'm a little partial to Torchwood, but yeah. I think it has had its they tried several times to bring that show back, and several waning seasons, I should say, or series, I should say, that kind of didn't pan out to what we wanted it to be. But I mean, I would also like to see that come back in some capacity, if it's not anything but like a short few episodes, a mini series or something.
Yeah, if anything, Torchwood, I think, really does need a real big finish. I think that would be good for them. And speaking of big finish,
but they do.
No pun, exactly, no pun intended. And on top of that, you also have a big finish adventure between the Eighth Doctor and River Song. So. Mm-hmm. So you've got that, airing this year. So you've got different avenues, and of course you've got the Doctor Who comics by Titan Comics. So you've got ways to get your fix, so to speak. It's just not that traditional. We want our episodes.
And again, like the time frame to me is just, I just feel it's too long. When you think about something like, just say Game of Thrones, you only get 10 episodes every year, but they're consistent every year. You're going to get them. It's going to be a year gap. You're only going to get 10 episodes, but they're coming. So I don't like the difference in time frame from series to series. I know the UK budget thing is a lot different than it is in America. So I would just like to see that be a little more concrete with the next era coming up.
I think a lot of that, and you guys, let me know if you disagree. I think a lot of this has put some bad taste in people's mouths, especially for Moffat, because, they kept saying, oh, yeah, there's not going to be a Series 10. Oh, yes, there is. And it's not going to be a full season. Oh, yes, there is. I would have much rather they have done like they did when David Tennant left in 2009. You didn't have a complete season in 2009. You had 3 specials leading up to the 2-part finale at Christmas and New Year's. Mm-hmm. But to harken back to what Clarence just said, you knew that on Easter, sometime during the summer, sometime in the fall, and then, your 2 right at Christmas and New Year, you knew when they were. You didn't have this finding out right at Christmas that it'll be next Christmas before you watch it again.
Right.
So,
yeah. I can't pretend like I liked those specials I always wish that I had liked them more, but they're not my favorite 10th Doctor adventures by any means.
No,
But I still agree with what you're saying, that it would be nice to at least sort of string something out across.
the only thing I remember from any of those specials is at the end of the one where they had the thing on the desert with the things flying through the desert and the woman telling him, "Your song is ending soon."
Yes.
That's the only thing I remember from that. I've watched it, but you're right. I don't have any inclination of going back and watching it again.
That's right. I've never. Yeah, I own those on DVD. I never watch it. Yeah. Huh. This is funny. If we were on Podshock right now, I would say, "Oh, what's the name of that one, Kyle?" Because you always know. Yeah.
Yep. And I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm purposely not looking it up because we said we were going to be organic, and I'm not going to look it up.
There you go. Yeah. Well, part of the interactive nature of this is for people to shout at their pod players and say, "How can you not know the name of that?" Yeah.
And it wasn't Water of Mars. It was
It's not Water of Mars.
It was. Okay, it'll come to us.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
anyone does remember it and who's listening to this right now, tweet it to us at Discussing Who on Twitter and let us know what it was.
And be sure to use the time travel code so it will get to us on the night when we recorded this.
Exactly. Wibbly wobbly.
Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of Stephen Moffat, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to do like he did and take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And when we come back, we'll talk about what's going to happen once Doctor Who finally does return. So we'll be right back. And we're back. So let's get right back into it. We were talking about Stephen Moffat right before we left, but let's talk about the guy who will be replacing him. And I'm going to try to get his name right. I believe it is Chris Chibnall. Is that right?
Yes.
Chibnall? Okay. All right. So looks like Mr. Chibnall has some prior Doctor Who work as well as Broadchurch. Now, there was a U.S. version of that, and there's also the U.K. version. The U.K. Version is obviously doing much better than did the United States version, because the United States version didn't get renewed.
Oh, okay. I've been wondering what Grace Point was. So Grace Point is the U.S. version. I see.
Bingo.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
Both
Grace
of which,
Point, yeah.
no spoiler intended, stars our very own David Tennant.
And Arthur Darvill.
Yep. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was in it.
Yes.
Speaking of, he is also Rip Hunter on the DC Legends of Tomorrow, which we should talk about at some point. But no, he has worked on. Let's see, he's worked on Torchwood. Actually, he was head writer for Torchwood, but he's also written the episode 42 in 2007 for Doctor Who. He has also done Law and Order UK. He has in 2010. Go ahead.
Which stars Free Magiment, I may say.
And it also had the Fifth Doctor in one of the seasons as well.
That's right. Yeah, Peter Davison and
yes,
and Free Magiment. That's true. So lots of connections there.
He's had The Hungry Earth, Cold Blood during the 11th Doctor's era, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, The Power of Three, Pond Life. So he's similar to what Moffat had been doing, sporadically writing episodes before taking over. So
very much, yeah. And
so, what do you guys feel about that?
Um,
Clarence, what do you think?
I'm I think it's a good idea to get somebody who has a lot of experience already on the show. I really would have to go back and review some of these episodes to see exactly what type of direct shows he did as a director, but or writer. But still, you don't know to what extent or what how much freedom he had in those shows for some of them. So it's going to be different, which I think it's time for a change, frankly. And just as long as he comes with fresh ideas, I think we'll be okay. And that's the main thing.
All right, Lee, what do you think?
Very true. Yeah. Well, Clarence and I were just talking about how much we both love and miss Torchwood, and I hadn't really put it all together until just looking at the written by credits. But Chris Chibnall, in a way, really was Torchwood, and so a lot of those sensibilities he would be bringing to the rest of the Doctor Who universe. One of his Torchwoods is the one called Countryside, which is one of the most troubling hours of television I've ever seen in my life. It's the only Torchwood. There's no alien. This is the big reveal. There's no monsters. It's just people. It's just people doing horrible things to each other because we do sometimes. That's the end.
You.
And I just remember having a shiver, during the closing titles, saying, "Oh, thanks for that." A little hour of drama, but very, very emotionally satisfying. But and he's written some of my favorite hours of Doctor Who. And once he was announced as being the new showrunner, I immediately had to go run and watch Broadchurch. And as we were just saying, thanks to our opportunities to binge these things now, so I watched the first season in one great go, 8 episodes, and just found it mesmerizing. And it's the writing. I mean, there are fantastic performances in it, and it is gorgeous to look at. It's a beautifully directed and photographed show, but the writing is so precise and so insightful, and so I just came away saying, "Oh please, this will be a year worth waiting for." I think,
and I think part of the wait comes in over the fact of he is committed to doing another. Series of Broadchurch and recording that as well as then getting into doing Doctor Who. I think some of this delay is not necessarily Moffat dictated. It's when does this gentleman become available to do Doctor Who?
Yeah, that would make sense.
I would have much rather in hindsight that if they were going to make us wait, do like they did with the 4-episode, do a couple of episodes at the end of the year, and then, do more episodes in the spring of next year, or just to kind of draw it out a little bit. So, right. All right, so let's go back for a second and talk about Moffat. So, as an overview, give me your thoughts, and Lee, I'll start with you. Give me your thoughts on what you thought about Moffat's era.
Well, as I'm getting excited about Chris Chibnall being the showrunner based on his last work, I'm remembering that I did the same thing about Stephen Moffat. I was saying, "Hooray! What a worthy successor to Russell T Davies." And then there's some times in the Moffat era where I've just said, "Oh my God, will you please just move on and let somebody else do this?" Particularly after the beginning of Sherlock, which I think is so bloody brilliant. And I'm deeply invested in the Sherlockian world, So I came to that kind of with my arms folded, and I honestly think that that's where his creative energy has been going. That he and Margaitis they're really in love with Sherlock, and the work shows over there, and that they sort of left Doctor Who to a certain degree wither on the vine, and that doesn't mean that Moffat hasn't written some wonderful things for Doctor Who in the meantime, but it's been uneven and sometimes just infuriating. I think things that we've talked about on Podshock, where we've all admitted to wanting to hurl things at the screen. It's almost always been in a Moffat script where you said, "Stephen, what?"
Well, I don't think it was withering on the vine. I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say it was left on cruise control.
cruise control is probably a much better image. Yes.
You know,
So, are you particularly talking about the last two seasons, or?
let's take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, the last two seasons were not my favorite, but again, I'm looking at that from a catch up point of view. You know, from somebody again who kind of binged the whole thing. The contrast is so stark when you look at the 11 Doctor episodes when he gets in there and the showrunner takes over. The episodes are so different. It's just almost like a shock. Of how different it is, and overall, you know, we have this thing of the long game with his episodes, with a lot of Moffat's episodes. You know, you get trickles of this overarching thing you're going to find out at the end of the series. I found that to be frustrating, but also very rewarding. You know, again, these last two seasons I really didn't enjoy that much, with the exception of a few episodes. But I think he did an okay job. You know, anything if you do for too long will start to wane a little bit. You know.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and while I was sitting here listening to you talk, I was thinking to myself, you know, part of what I did not like about his era was, yes, there was the overreaching art, and there was the mysteries that had to be solved. But there was the same thing with the RTD era. But to me, I didn't get as bored with the RTD era simply because there felt like there was a payoff at the end. There were so many things with Moffat's era that, oh, well, yeah, just take it for what it is. You know, we're never going to explain that. That's just the way, there really wasn't an explanation on some of those things. And that's kind of where I'm agreeing with both of you and saying maybe it's just time for a change. So, got a question for you. I have a theory. You guys interested in hearing it?
Of course.
Now, this is a long shot, but I'm going to give you a hint. The numbers 11, 12, and 14. What do you think? That's my theory. Any guesses? 11, 12, and 14.
It's those are elevator buttons and.
All right. So we do know that he being Chibnall, has one more series of Broadchurch to do, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
All right. So, and there may be more after that, but we know right now he's working on that. Who else is working on that with him? Who's the main star? Who's the cop?
Well, David Tennant and.
Okay. Yeah. David Tennant would then theoretically, possibly, be available after Broadchurch is concluded. Having said that, that explains 11, 12, and 14. What if he is the potential replacement for, since they're already working together? I mean, I know that's far out there, but it's not totally impossible. He does like that face, after all.
He does.
Remember?
Yeah.
No,
So
I don't think I don't think that'll ever happen.
I don't either, but I'll call that wishful thinking.
Yeah. Well, Broadchurch, like I said, also has Arthur Darvill and in the first few episodes, David Bradley as well, who we've seen not only on Dinosaurs in a Spaceship, written by Chris Chibnall, but also in Adventures in Time and Space as William Hartnell. So,
One day, I should come back. Yes.
It was great, yeah.
I should come back. Yeah. And he was also Walter Frey in Game of Thrones.
There you go. There's connections all around. But,
So let me ask you both this. Name me, what do you think that back to Moffat, what do you think his biggest contribution has been to the whole Doctor Who? And Clarence, I'll start with you this time.
Oh man, put me on the spot here.
What came to your mind? What was the first thing you thought of?
I don't know. To me, just his episode just felt so radically different. And part of that is a change in Doctor, but the writing to me, again, like I just said before, had more of a through line that kind of kept you guessing. It I know that's what they're trying to do is keep you guessing the whole time. But to me, his ideas have been kind of far out there, and I don't know how much of that is him or his staff. But I've enjoyed a lot of his writing. With the exception of the last 2 seasons, I thought it's been great, and I think just that through line throughout the series has been kind of his main thing for me. Of hints of the same thing every episode or every few episodes, that kind of kept you in for the long haul.
Got you. Lee, what say ye?
Well, as a writer, I'm always looking to see what somebody's stamp is going to be on something like this, and I'll have to do the research. I wonder if somebody who might hear this knows the answer. Moffat wrote The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. I don't know if that means that he created and owns the character of Captain Jack.
Interesting.
And he, of course, wrote Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. So is he responsible for River Song?
Right. Well, I would say the answer to that is yes. At least from River, from the River perspective.
So that's huge in the Doctor Who world. If he gave us Captain Jack and River Song, I don't know. I don't know how much of that was part of the orderly transition of power from RTD. If he had these notes and or characters in mind, and also the Paternoster Gang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now we've got. Now a lot of us Sherlock Holmes fans know who was really behind some of those cases that Watson recorded, since they all seem to have actually been done by Madame Vastra. So those are really, really big things in terms of characters that are added to the canon.
And I think you hit on something very important. I mean, as fans, we can sit here and dissect and redissect and redissect again, triple dissect, and just tear it down as much as we want. But at the end of the day, every single one of them have brought something new, whether it appealed to everyone. That's like what you guys said at the very beginning. If we all sit here and agree, then how boring is that?
Right.
Well, I have a question for you guys real quick. What do you think they can do different with the series? I mean, we've had so many iterations and all type of ideas thrown at us, and vast array of aliens, different planets. What do you think that the next person, the showrunner, can bring that's different to Doctor Who?
Ooh,
good one. And I'm going to let the writer. I'm somewhat of a writer, but you're the writer. Well, so go for it.
I'm on Stephen Moffat's IMDb page, so I'm reading all of his contributions to Doctor Who, and I'm thinking there's a point in the recent series where my wife said, "That's it, I'm done watching this show." And it was the umpteenth time that the whole universe disappeared because the Doctor's in danger, or that alien races fled at the mere mention of his name. At the point at which he becomes God, there's nothing else to write about, and nobody cares.
The Superman dilemma.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's the Superman dilemma raised to an insane power, and there's no kryptonite. And what I was sensing with some of the things that were going on with Peter Capaldi's Doctor is sort of busting him back down to a level that is interesting to us. And so I like that direction, And then, damn it, in the Husbands of River song, River believes that he can't love her because he's too big, he's too important for her. And I'm saying, Moffat, stop it. What is your problem, dude? You just, can you, anyway. So I would love to see a new showrunner. One of the things that I think worked about the series in the classic era is that he's on the run, he's at odds with the Time Lords. He doesn't know how this machine works sometimes, that sometimes he got in these situations by accident and honestly doesn't know what to do. And I liked that. And it was not an assumption that he's going to win in the end. And a lot of the regeneration stories that were the most successful from the classic era came because he tried.
You had no idea they were coming.
Exactly. I mean, when the Fifth Doctor, is dying of Spetrox toxemia, I love that name. He says, "I don't know. It feels different this time. This may be it. I may be dying now."
Right.
And he'd still done the right thing, but it's a mess. It's a total hopeless mess, and we didn't expect that the universe in chorus was going to make things right for him, and I missed that. So I would really like to see a new showrunner, I don't know, help to keep him on a level that's possible. Drawing the parallel with Superman is really that's really profound. Because it's the same problem. How do we keep relating to this character if he's a god?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought up Superman because in the comics, they have actually had a storyline going on for about the past 2 years that actually had Superman in blue jeans and a T-shirt, and he could no longer fly. He had lost majority of his powers. So that's, interesting that we brought up that analogy, and they have been dealing with that in the very comics themselves. So,
the period that I grew up when I was growing up, I'm a Silver Age comics guy. So at the time when I was reading Superman as in my early teens, was when he could travel through time and when he had super memory and things like that. And,
yes, super hypnosis
and super hypnosis, right, and on and on.
Wow.
And there was the whole fleet of super animals, and
yes,
it's just
Lee, were you around? Did you read Crisis on Infinite Earths?
No, and so
okay.
I'm kind of on the outside of that one, but
all right. Well, then you will definitely need to talk about the original Crisis because that's one of my very favorite stories. Yes, it wrecked the DC universe in many ways, but I remember
that's the price.
Yeah, literally. And speaking of price, it's funny that you said that. I remembered, and this is the most I've ever spent for a comic book. It was back in 97, 98, 99. They collected this 1985 12-issue comic series into a hardcover, and I think at the time I paid like $99 for this hardcore. I mean, not hardcore, whatever.
That's a different podcast completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Comics.
So anyway, of the Crisis. So yes, we definitely need to talk about
$100. Yeah, hokey smoke Bullwinkle. Yeah, and
So, well, it looks like we've pretty much covered everything. Want to wrap up by talking one other thing. But before I do that, I want to ask you two, is there anything else that we've not covered that you want to talk about?
Clarence?
Nothing I can think of right now.
All right.
When we were talking about comics earlier, I wanted to do a shout out to a new friend. I was invited to be one of the speakers and guests at NerdCon in Huntsville, Alabama, at the Rocket City NerdCon. And one of the other special guests there was Simon Fraser, who draws the 11th Doctor comics for Titan.
Oh, cool.
And indeed. And the con being what it was, we both had our panels to our presentations to do, after which we just got to hang out. So I spent a good afternoon with Simon Fraser watching him drawing his dead-on likenesses of Matt Smith, in 30 seconds the way he does. He drew a Tom Baker for me without reference from memory. That is a gorgeous piece of art that I'm always going to cherish. But I just wanted to say hi, Simon, and point people towards his website, which is simonfraser.net. Fraser spelled Fraser. And if you're not reading the Titan Doctor Who comics, you should have a look at them. He works very closely with these writers, so there's a degree to which he's writing them as well as illustrating them. But it's they're very interesting adventures, and he's getting to do some fun things with them.
Well, you know what? I challenge you, Lee, to have him come on and talk to us about that sometime. That would be really fun to do.
Yeah. Well, he lives in the U.S. now, but not that matters in the Skype universe.
Nope. But Simon, you heard it here first. You've got an open invitation. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
So, Clarence, do you have anything?
I was just going to ask: are the comics considered canon?
Not really.
He says that everything that they do as story has to be cleared by the BBC.
Right.
So to his way of thinking, that makes everything canon.
Okay, I could go with that.
And he, in fact, this is one of the things that was on his panel that I thought was interesting. There's a sequence in one of his comics where he shows the doctors being forced, the doctor being forced to, I don't know how to describe this, but it's a montage image of all of the doctor's incarnations and lives. So there's sort of first doctor who's morphing into second doctor and so on and so on. And the last doctor is the older fourth doctor that we saw in, help me out here, The Day of the Doctor.
Right. The curator.
Right.
The curator.
And he had drawn him as being what looks like in the drawing the last life of the Doctor. So there's your idea of a face coming back again. But he said that since that was cleared by BBC, that makes it canon.
Right.
that was him coming back.
I'm going with that.
Well, and he has.
I'm going with that.
He has created a character. Nikolai Dante is the character that he has been drawing for years, and you got to help me out here again with episode titles. The one where they're doing where Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman are doing the crime caper one, where they've got to. It's like the Mission Impossible one, where they've got to get things out of the. You know what I'm talking about?
It's not Flatline.
No.
The Mission Impossible. You're talking about with Trap Street?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Face the Raven.
No. It's like multiple bank vaults and so on. They've got to get past this door and then get past.
Time something, wasn't it?
Yes, I think so. And I'm Time Heist. Thank you. Yes. Thank you,
Time
Andrew.
Heist, yes.
Time Heist, yes. Anyway, they're going through a database of dangerous criminals. At one point, they're looking through suspects, people who might have tried to break in. And briefly on the screen is Nikolai Dante, is Simon Fraser's character. So he says, boom, that makes that Doctor Who canon also. So.
Cool.
Anyway.
Cool. Well, what I will do is no. What I will do is we have a blog that we are starting for this podcast.
Yeah.
It can be found at discussingwho.tumblr.com, and I will put up some information about the time this first episode goes out about Simon's work, and provide a link as well to his website. So that'll get that up there. And in the meantime, just want to ask you guys real quick, is there anything else you guys are working on that you'd like to share with us? Clarence, I'll let you go first.
Nothing right now. Just follow me on Twitter if you want to. That's @woodunball. I know it's really weird, but it's spelled just like it sounds. And can't wait for the next episode.
All right, Lee?
Yeah, same here. I've almost always got, juggling 12 balls at once. But right now, I don't really have a lot going on. But yeah. We're counting on people to want to look at your blog and figure out how to contact us and follow us around. So
Right, and speaking of following Lee and I around, I want to give a shout out to two other podcasts that you guys who are listening to us will probably get tired of hearing about, but the reason that we'll be talking about them as much as we do is because I don't think, I can't speak for Clarence, but Lee and I would not be sitting here doing a podcast about Doctor Who, I wouldn't think, if it weren't for three people, especially that do podcasting, one of which